Welcome, guys. Yeah, really thrilled to be on at a slightly different time, Lee and I, but this is the holidays, and we realised that, yeah, we might have to shuffle things a little bit around, and we have committed, haven't we, Lee, to each other to do this monthly session for the whole year. So nothing was going to hold us back. So yeah, we've gone ahead and done it this evening. But yeah, and the most exciting thing, I think, for me with our sessions, Lee, is that these are all going on to YouTube, and I'm now pushing to get you know, subscribers onto YouTube for my channel. But our session last time, out of all my videos, and I have got a fair few, I've got over 50, had the highest yeah, watches.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's good news.
Yeah, so I think it's, for me, it's a real need, this kind of mindset and property. There's a lot of mindset, but not so much of the property. So I'm just double checking, Lee, you definitely have got your computer and your...
So my Zoom is muted and the computer is muted.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. I'm not quite sure. There's still a bit, but that's fine. Let's carry on. So, guys, we are jumping in to this month's topic, and this was huge to me when I first met Lee. I knew that I had to take responsibility for my life, which clearly I wasn't that keen on. But when I was told to look at my results, and if they weren't the results that I was wanting to look inside. Now, that was a tough pill. That was extreme. I kind of, you know, had spent most of my life blaming others and blaming other people. And suddenly, as we've titled this, you will know them by their fruit, was suddenly really huge to me. So, yeah, so I suppose just a bit of an intro, Lee. Quick introduction to yourself, and then we'll jump straight into it.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's session. So my name is Lee Rubik, and I am one of South Africa's, and I don't know how to say this humbly, Emma, one of South Africa's best trained speakers. I was trained at the so-called Harvard of Professional Speaking Schools in Boston. In July 2014, it's called the Bill Gove Speech Workshop. So what is it that I do? I help entrepreneurs remove money blocks and attract clients easily, and I work with business people from all around the world. I've been mentored by one of the legends of the personal development industry, and we'll get into his story a bit later, but that's just a brief introduction, Emma.
Fantastic. So let's jump straight in. So obviously this whole premise that you will know them by their fruit. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, this was just a huge, almost kick in the teeth, I think, because most of us, don't we can spend our whole lives thinking that, you know, it's somebody else's fault or it's whatever. So, you know, what did this mean to you, I suppose? And then we'll kind of go, I know we've got some content that we're going to cover, but how did this affect you? Was it the same with you as I had that reaction?
Look, it's exactly what I suggested to you, right? Emma, my mentor said to me, he said exactly that. He says, your results tell you exactly where your thinking is. And, you know, you've titled this by the fruits, you'll know them. There was a great teacher over 2,000 years ago that said that, right? So the results on the outside tell us exactly what's happening on the inside. And you know, as hard a pill as that can be to swallow sometimes, you know, whether we talk in income, whether we talk in health results, whether we talk in relationships, everything that you're experiencing on the outside or in your physical existence is a direct reflection of what's happening inside of you. And I think it was tough. Exactly your experience. Initially, it was very tough. To accept, Emma, that I was creating these results. It wasn't happening to me, it was actually proceeding through me.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, when you talk about that, it reminds me as well, because I always think about this, is breaking it down. It's not just an overall picture, it's looking at your finances, your health, your relationships, whatever it is. If you're not getting those results, what I find intriguing, and what we haven't had before, and certainly through years and years and years of reading and studying books, I didn't seem to be changing those results. Whereas talking with you and in the Proctor Gallagher Institute that we share the learnings from, it was suddenly, and it's the only thing that I've had where you actually have a path and a clear route of how you can actually do something to change it. And that's been pretty special for me. So I know one of the ones that we really wanted to open with is sort of understanding all of these elements from our sort of mind. So what does the mind kind of look like in relation to what we're talking about here, Lee?
Before I get, if I may, Emma, I'd like to tell a couple of stories before we get into the mind. So I know you were going to ask that question, what does the mind look like? How does it operate? But I'd like to open with a couple of stories. Now, the concept with regards to the mind that I'm going to share later on can literally change the rest of the course of your life. I've been studying this concept for many years now, and it's made a massive difference, just like it has for you, right, Emma? But I've been mentored since December 2016, mentored by the legendary Bob Proctor. Some of you who are listening might have heard the name before, but Bob, at the time of his passing last year in February 2022, he had been studying mindset, human potential, and success for 61 years, 6 decades. And way back in 1961, I think I told the story 2 episodes prior here on this particular session that you and I do monthly, Emma. But way back in 1961, Bob Proctor, and we're just taking the foundation for the concept that I'm going to teach on. In 1961, he was earning $4,000 as a fireman in Toronto, in East York, and he owed $6,000. So he was in an impossible situation. He often used to say that if he had worked for a whole year and a half just to repay debt, he'd have nothing to live on. And his days was filled with trying to get creditors off his back. And during his time at the fire station there was a man who used to come around by the name of Raymond Stanford. And Ray obviously seen something in Bob Proctor. He took a liking to the man. And he said to him one day, he said, "Bob, you got to be one of the most miserable people that I've ever met." And Bob Proctor says, as much as that, and you know the story, right? He says, as much as that stung him, he had to admit that there was truth in what this man was saying. He wasn't a very happy person. And then Ray said to him, "You always seem to be coming down with something. Whether it's a headache or the sniffles or a cold, or you don't have any terminal illness, but you always seem to be coming down with something." Once again, Bob said he had to admit this man was telling the truth, because the results always tell the truth, right? And then thirdly, Ray said to him, "You never seem to have any money." And like I said, he earned $4,000, he owed $6,000. And then Ray said to him, on top of that, Ray said, "Have you ever seen me when I was unhappy?" And Bob had to admit this man always had a spring in his step. He was upbeat, he was positive. And he said, "No, I've never seen you when you were unhappy. You seem to be a very happy guy." And secondly, Ray said to him, "Have you ever seen me when I was sick?" And once again, he had to agree, he had to admit, right? Never seen this man sick. And then thirdly, Ray said, "Have you ever seen me when I was broke?" And Bob Proctor says this is the one thing that grabbed his attention the most about Ray Stanford. This man always seemed to have a roll of cash on him. And, Bob was always trying to hit somebody up for money for gas. And Ray said to Bob Proctor, he said, your way is not working. Why don't you try my way? And then Ray gave Bob this book. The book is, for those in Clubhouse that cannot see what's currently being streamed, the book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Ray gave him this book, and he said, I'm going to give you a couple of other suggestions. And if you do exactly what I tell you to do, you can have anything you want. And Bob said there was no way he could believe that. Like, you know, I got to read this book. You're going to give me a couple of suggestions, and I just follow these suggestions, and I can have anything that I want. He said there's no way he could have believed it. But he said this man said it with such conviction that he didn't believe it, but he believed Ray believed it. And for some strange reason, he followed exactly what Ray laid out in front of him from a mentorship perspective. And within 1 year, Bob had multiplied his income by 43 3/4. He had taken his income from $4,000 to $175,000 within 1 year. And within 5 years, he took it over $1 million. Now think of this. This is in the early 1960s. So imagine if 4,000 was an average salary, how much money 175 or $1 million was. And you might be sitting there wondering, you know, what did Bob actually do? He started an office cleaning company, and he opened offices in Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Cleveland, Atlanta, and London, England, close to your neck of the woods there, Emma. And after 5 years, when he had taken his income over $1 million, right, he was sitting in London and asking himself, you know, what happened? Like what changed? Because he was taught, probably like you and I, that if you're going to make a lot of money, you got to be really smart. Or if you're going to do well in business, you got to have a good formal education. Bob Proctor had 3 months high schooling. He knew he wasn't very smart, and that's not my words; it's his words. And here he was. He had a company all over the, 3 different countries, 6 different cities, and he was making a ton of money. And he had to ask himself what happened. And that set him on a journey of discovery into finding out exactly what had shifted within him. Now remember, the theme of our discussion here tonight is by their fruits you'll know them, right? So something within him had shifted. And, just another thing Ray Stanford said to him during the interaction. They said to him, Bob, who are you? Like, who are you? He said, no, I'm Bob. It's a silly question. You know who I am. He said, no. He said to Bob, no, that's not you. That's your name. And then he said to Ray, no, then this is me, pointing at his physical body. And Ray said to him, no, that's not you. That's your body. And Bob didn't know where he was going with it. Like, what he was trying to do, Ray was trying to get him to think or try to understand exactly who and what he is. I mean, how are we going to change our results on the outside if we don't know who we are? So a couple of years later, like I say, we're sitting in London, in the UK. And eventually he's led to a seminar in British Columbia, in Canada. And he meets a man there by the name of Leland Val Vanderwell. And, he says, he's at the seminar, Val steps on stage. He says, the minute this man got on stage, he says he knew what he was talking about, Emma. And a couple of weeks later, he set up a meeting in Toronto with Val. And Val sat him down, and remember, we're talking about who are you? Because if you want to change your results, you've got to understand your mind. You've got to understand who you are. And Val said to him, he said, Bob, you operate on 3 planes of understanding. And Bob said, yes, I know. He says, no, you don't know, or you wouldn't be asking me the questions that you ask. He says, shut up and listen. And then he smiled. And he said, Val said to him, you're firstly a spiritual being. You have an intellect, and you live in a physical body. Don't you think it's strange that people think they're their name or they think they're their body? When we say it's my body, my name, my results, my leg, my head, but we think we're that, right? A lot of people but the thing is, the very essence, where you firstly a spiritual being, you move into your body, one day you're going to move out of it. So you firstly a spirit, you were gifted with an intellect, and you live in a physical body, and you correspond with the physical world. And then Ray drew an image on a napkin for Bob Proctor that brought all of it together in terms of his understanding in what changed over those 5 years, how he went from losing, unhealthy, unhappy, broke, to really winning in a big way within a couple of years. And for those of you that are watching this via stream, and I'm going to explain it to everybody on Clubhouse now, but this is an image of the mind. And if you're sitting and you're listening to this via Clubhouse, and you've got a notepad and a pen in front of you, I want you to draw a couple of circles and a couple of lines. So draw a big circle, and below the big circle, I want you to draw a little circle. And then draw a line in the center, joining the top circle and the bottom circle. And then on the bottom circle, which is the body, and you can write there body, you have 4 lines coming off it, symbolizing the arms and the legs. And then the mind on top, the big circle, is horizontally divided into 2. The top half being the conscious mind, and the bottom half being the subconscious mind. Now, one of the suggestions Ray gave Bob Proctor, Emma, was he said, read a bit from Think and Grow Rich every day. Bob not only read a bit from this book every day, he went and he got the condensed narration of that book, a recording by Earl Nightingale, and he played it every day. He drove around with a battery-operated record player. And this condensed narration was playing all the time. And he was basically repeating all of these ideas in the book and in the recording and moving it into his subconscious. Now, why is this relevant to this discussion tonight? So there's 2 parts to your mind, the conscious mind and the subconscious. Now, psychologists, psychiatrists will tell you there's many more parts to your mind, and that's probably very true. But there's 2 parts we want to focus on from a results perspective. Now, your subconscious mind creates 96 to 98% of your results, your perceptions, and your behaviors. Only 2 to 4% come from the conscious thinking mind. Now, a lot of people, they deify the intellect, get more education, get degrees. And I mean, there's nothing. Knowledge is sacred, but it's not necessarily, we were taught that knowledge is power. Knowledge is no such thing. It's the applied knowledge, which is the power. It's when we take the knowledge and move it from the consciousness or from the conscious mind into the subconscious mind. So Emma, is there any questions you'd like to ask? I just wanted to tell those few stories just to kind of set the foundation for what we were going to talk about.
No, I mean, I think it's incredibly powerful, and certainly when I talk to people, and I obviously coach and mentor property investors,
yep.
And like I did when I first started, it was just all about the learning, finding out as much as I could, listening to podcasts all the time, going through teachings, trainings, just learning. And that is essential. So as you've said, it's not depleting that, but you have to say, well, you have to see how important the mindset element of it is. And and I really see that, I see people who, have less knowledge, but are doing far better, you know. And you can have people that, you know, have got so much knowledge and they're just so frustrated. They don't understand why things aren't moving so well for them. And that's where, when I saw that picture, I mean, I'm very logical, as you are, Lee, it kind of frustrated me because I was a bit like, that's just stupid. That picture of that person, that just seems so silly. But once I understood that my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions, you know, bring me my results, it was like this light bulb moment. It was like, blimmin' heck, suddenly I can, you know, look at my thoughts. What am I thinking? And that's, my gosh, we think unbelievable things in a day. And it, you know, even doing this for a long time, just, you know, recently I've been catching myself thinking about the wrong things. And again, what we feel, I mean, gosh, that is huge. And then obviously the actions we take. So suddenly to have this path to help me change that was absolutely huge. So, but yeah, so why, you know, carrying on from this, why do you think it is so difficult to change our results?
Because most people don't have an awareness of how the mind works and how the mind operates. Like you gave a classic example, and I know I did that for many years, and I know you did too, Emma, where we go to the courses, we study the books. You know, in our industry, in the personal development industry, we call it shelf out. So a lot of people read the books, you know, they gather the knowledge, goes onto the shelf, but nothing changes. They might get jazzed for a while, excited by the book. But the thing is, buy your fruits, buy their fruits, you'll know them. So it's not, do you know it? It's, are you doing it? Are you doing it? Like, rather take a paragraph of a book that's really impactful and read it over and over and over, because one of the ways that you move an idea from your conscious thinking mind into the subjective mind, which controls the behavior, is through constant spaced repetition, right? And you read it over and over until you find yourself doing it. And once you're doing it, then you move on to another idea or something else. You know, just in regards to, you know, people become, another way of looking at it, Emma, people become top heavy. So they gather all of this knowledge in the conscious mind, but it never moves into the subconscious, where the paradigm is that's controlling 96 to 98% of what this body is doing. You know, they gather all of this knowledge because school taught us how to gather valuable knowledge. However, school never taught us how to alter old paradigms, old mental programs. Therefore, as we get older, we gain more knowledge, inferior results, and this causes confusion and frustration. So as we get older, we know more, especially if you're learning all the time, but we seem to do less. Now, until we are able to close this gap between what we know on a conscious level and what we're actually doing, I promise you there's going to be massive frustration. And this right here, you know, this idea around this stick person, this concept or this image that we call the stick person, and this gap between what you know and what you do. This is the big reason why you'll find somebody with degrees coming off their resume, off their CV, and yet they can't get work. And then for some equally strange reason, like you said, you see people who don't have a good formal education, they're getting great results. That's because the habitual patterns or what they do on a daily basis, Emma, is different, you know, or it's getting them the results they want, whether it's how to prospect, you know, their sales ability, the interpersonal skills, whatever it is, but they're obviously doing something that's getting them the results they want. So we've got to understand how to take an idea from the conscious mind and move it into the subconscious, not just read it, not just know it, not just learn it, but to actually internalize it so that the results on the outside, our behavior changes and the results change. Because the results tells you what you're thinking at the deep level, what you're thinking at the subconscious level. Did I answer your question?
Definitely, definitely. I was just thinking through that, and a lot of this is kind of looking at others and seeing where they're at. And in fact, it comes across a really interesting, you know, on Sunday, where they're a family lunch, and there's a couple there. And I mean, they looked quite old, but they were also quite sprightly looking. And there was a lot of, you know, age ranges from a 3-month-old. Anyway, it transpires that I think one of them was 92 or something, and the other was 90, couple. I'm looking at them thinking, wow, I mean, they look really incredible. There's other 80-year-olds sat there who don't look as healthy and fit as these two. And the lady sat there at one point chatting to another lady who was sort of 10 years younger. And the younger lady was just talking a lot about how terrible life was, and how, you know, it was a tough challenge for them. Anyway, I was watching this lady, and she just never let anything kind of go in. She just sort of went, oh yes, and then just changed it to a positive. She wasn't at all being rude. There was nothing, but she just wouldn't take in anything. Now, I don't think it was necessarily conscious, but it was really beautiful to see. And it really made me think about myself and what I do, and that is definitely sort of, for me, is Bob would always talk about knowing who you are. And again, I didn't get that initially, Lee. But now, especially watching somebody like that lady, it's like, okay, I'm seeing other people, I'm seeing what they do. And when I see successful people, in fact, I was thinking about somebody who used to sell books door to door. And this girl was really successful. And we see it, don't we? And we see successful people in property, and it's like, I want to bottle that up. What is it that they're doing that's so successful? And most of them are what we call unconscious competence, aren't they? They don't really know what it is they're doing. And I quite recently, I thought back about this girl was called Tessa. What was she doing? What was so successful about what she was doing? And when I look back on it, she was just doing the things that other people weren't doing. They weren't particularly difficult, and we were told we needed to get up at this time, we needed to knock on this many doors, we needed to say this script. And I remember following her and looking at her really deeply, like really looking at her. What is she doing that I'm not doing? She wasn't particularly happy or sad. She wasn't particularly anything. She just did it and had massive results. And when I look back, I just didn't do those basics. And so, yeah, so that kind of understanding who I am, that has been a really kind of interesting thing. So how important is it to kind of know who you are?
Everything. Because we're talking about your results, right? If you want to improve your business results, your income, if you'd like to improve your health, you know, your daily habits, if you want to improve your relationships, you have to know who you are. You know, Emma, you heard Bob say before, he used to say often that success is 5% strategy, 95% mindset. Now, if you don't know you're a spiritual being, you've been gifted with an intellect, and through the proper use, the effective use of your intellect, you can tap into this power. You can shift what's in your subconscious paradigm, but you can also connect with this higher power. And not only does your behavior change, but what you attract into experience also changes. Now, if you don't understand these different parts of your personality, who you are, and how to bring about change, we're pretty much stuck. And that's where I was for quite a big portion of my life. You know, I was stuck. I didn't know how to, like, we all know how to get healthier. We all know how to hit the gym a couple of times a week and, you know, run and eat healthily. And we all know, you know, if I treat people a specific way, I'm going to get favorable results. But our behaviors and what we actually do is contrary to that. We know how to do it. But this paradigm, this program in your subconscious that's been handed to us genetically and environmentally in our little life, it's running the show. So if we don't know who we are and how, what our makeup is, we're pretty much stuck. We have to know that first.
And how do you think, you know, for somebody new coming into this and, you know, maybe they've got some, you know, they've started out afresh in property and they're getting this knowledge, and, you know, a big part of the property community is, it's a wonderful place because we can openly talk about mindset, which I think in most business worlds or in anywhere, you it's like sort of frowned upon, a bit freefy, a bit odd. But when somebody says, you know, you really need to know who you are, I mean, do I not know who I am? I mean, what does that mean? What when somebody's being faced with that, what advice would you give them on how to know yourself? I mean, surely we do know ourselves.
Most people think they're their name. Do people really know who they are? People are operating with a limited perception of who and what they are. So how we elevate that, Emma, is through study. It's through proper mentorship and guidance, where we actually expand our awareness and where we actually understand who and what we really are. Because, I mean, there's something so powerful about everybody listening to this call right now, something so powerful about you, Emma, and about me that's beyond comprehension. And that's the truth, right? We're the offspring of a deathless soul. There's something so powerful about you. But this paradigm, this mental program in the subconscious is stopping this perfection that's already within you from coming to the surface. There's only two sources of reference we can go to understand who you are. One is theology, and the other is science. And both of those sources tell us that you've got infinite potential. But it's the paradigm, the programming, this virus code, so to speak, in the subconscious that's stopping this perfection from bubbling to the surface, from coming to the surface. We have to get the right mentorship. We have to get the correct understanding. And we are definitely not our name. People, I didn't know. I didn't honestly, and I think, you know, you also, your experience was the same. I didn't know who I was. I thought I knew who I was, but I didn't know who I was. I mean, if somebody, I'll give you an example, simple example that anybody listening to us can understand. If you know you shouldn't be eating that piece of cake, you don't want the results it's going to give you on a diet, or you're trying to live a healthier lifestyle, but you go ahead and you eat the cake anyway. Somebody asks you, you know, why did you eat the cake? I thought you're on a diet. And you say, no, I am. So they say, why did you do that? I don't know. So here we are. And this experience, you know, people at the start of every year, they want to get healthier. They want to get fitter. They, you know, get into the gym. You know, it lasts for a couple of weeks. We call them New Year's resolutionists, right? For those of us that have been spent years in the gym, we see every year, January, the first 3-4 weeks, and then the gym empties out again. And that's because people don't understand who they are. If you understand that there's something inside of you, there's this mental program that's running the show, and if you fighting against it consciously and you're trying to shift behavior, you're fighting a losing battle. Once you understand who you really are and how to move that idea from your conscious mind to the subconscious to change behavior effortlessly, until you understand that, people are literally fighting, and we're fighting against ourselves. And this applies to all areas of our lives, from selling to prospecting to contacting investors whatever it is that you're doing in your daily activity. A lot of people, or some people, can do things by force, but it's far better to do it effortlessly, to move it into your subconscious so that it aligns with your behavior. And that's all an automatic process. And we have to understand who we are. We have to if we're going to change our results and we're going to change the fruit that we're getting on the outside, we have to understand ourselves. We have to understand what's happening inside before the outside changes.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. But I think another thing that kind of has sprung to my mind as well is that you spoke about kind of, as we get older, we may know more, but we seem to sort of do and achieve less. And it's almost like, I remember when I was much younger, I had these huge goals and these big dreams. And then it seemed that the life kind of battered it out of you, and, maybe school or whatever it was, it kind of seemed to batter it out. And coming into this program, one of the huge things, and it's almost like the number one thing that Bob talks about, is having a massive goal. And it's almost like ripping off those limits that we've put. And it was just amazing. It was almost a jump back in time as a child and allowing myself again to have these crazy big dreams. As scary as that is to even admit it. And yeah, I'm just going for them. And you know what? Whatever happens, whatever comes in that way, but I'm going to keep going. And that's been incredibly refreshing. And it does require, as you say, sort of knowing it. But do you think that is why, a lot of people tend to find self-help a bit later on? Have we literally been battered down so much, and then this seems like the only other option?
Remember when you were a little kid, you naturally had a highly evolved imagination. Like grade 1, grade 2, you'd come to school, you'd stare out of the window, and your teacher would say, "Emma, come back into the room. You're daydreaming again." Or you go home and you tell your mom and your dad, "I'm going to build a spaceship and I'm going to take my friends." We had these naturally highly active imaginations. But your teacher would say, "Stop daydreaming," or your parents would say, "How are you going to do that? You got to be realistic." So we taught at a very young age to put our imaginations away. And that's why people start setting realistic or logical goals. Now, we've got to have a plan, and we've got to kind of know how we're going to get moving. But the thing is, you just go as far as you can see. And when you get there, you can see further. We all know that people who have achieved great things in life all didn't know how they were going to get there. Like classic examples. Edison didn't know how he was going to invent the incandescent light bulb until after he achieved it. Sir Edmund Hillary didn't know how he was going to get to the top of that mountain until afterwards. He failed on the first 2 attempts. He summited that mountain. The third attempt in 1953, and he was knighted by the Queen. Everybody who's achieved something of great significance, who's broken barriers, never knew how they were going to get there when they started out. But they lived in this imaginative world. Steve Jobs said, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. You have to trust that the dots will connect." Now, because we were programmed, Emma, to pack our imagination away, be realistic, that's not, we kind of put ourselves in a box. Like we start thinking, what are we capable of? And I believe that if we really tap into this power inside of us, we're capable of far beyond anything that we can imagine. Napoleon Hill, in this book that Bob Proctor studied for 6 decades, in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, in this book, he says, the imagination is the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world has ever known. That room you're sitting in, that house, was once in someone's imagination. This phone, was once in someone's imagination. The computer, but we get to experience it now in the physical world. So the imagination is truly one of our superpowers, one of our 6 superpowers.
Yeah, amazing. And in fact, you said something when we were speaking earlier that kind of, again, threw me off kilter. You said that Bob Proctor had never had a business plan. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're drummed in, aren't we? And that's the things that you've just been saying. And I knew that you get to a certain vibration and you attract other people on that vibration, or there's definite serendipity or serendipitous things that suddenly seem to crop up, seem to attract. And I think a lot of us shut them down. We close it away. And yeah, this whole imagined reality, I think especially from a property perspective, you see some people, I mean, I'm talking to people that do crazy, massive things. Just think, wow, and they're no different to anyone else. They're just normal humans. They just talk about, a few extra zeros, like somebody else would talk about a tenner, and they're talking about millions. And it's, it's having, they just don't have that limit. They haven't limited themselves. So yeah, that was, massive earlier. And I suppose, is it things happen for us, not to us?
Everything is happening for you, not to you. Yeah, spot on. Remember, we spoke about the conscious, the subconscious, or I've been talking about it all the while in this past 45 minutes. 2 to 4% of your power comes from the conscious thinking mind. So what is a business plan? It's the strategy, right? And 96 to 98% of what you do comes from the subconscious emotional mind. So there was a great author by the name of Neville Goddard. He wrote The Power of Awareness, but he used to say, feeling is the secret. So obviously these individuals that you might be referring to, Emma, they take an idea, whether it's a project or, a particular investment vehicle, whatever, investment vehicle, and they get so emotionally involved with it that they start attracting everything they need for the realization of that. But they live in it. They literally get emotionally involved with it. Meanwhile, there's a lot of us that are bouncing around in the intellectual mind, using 2 to 4% of our power. So, feeling is truly the secret. And that's why we've got to understand who we are. We've got to understand how to tap into that subconscious part of us. We have to learn how to tap into the subconscious mind.
So moving into that, obviously the way that we can change our results. I mean, the first thing that just crops up is for those of us who are totally that 4 to 6% of logic. Like I'm just one big ball of logic. So what you're talking about is that such a small, tiny part. And then there's this huge emotional side. So what advice would you give to, somebody like myself who you might look at a property project and logically is kind of like, yeah, is that going to happen? It's like, I've got to see a path. And I know we've spoken before that I do like to have a bit of a route to market. I'm writing a book at the moment and, I really like a framework. But interestingly, even today, a couple of things cropped up that I'd not really thought about. And I thought, that was really useful. It's, I'd not anticipated getting that back from these conversations, but it came out of nowhere. So how do we understand the difference between this logic and this emotion?
So here's a question back to you, Emma. Like if you've been moving in property circles for a decade or 8 years, 10 years, if you've been rubbing shoulders and you've been training and you've been looking at all these strategies and you really understand what you're doing, right? Wouldn't it be better, instead of having a couple of bullet points and writing out to really, say, okay, here's 10 chapters or 12 chapters, these are the titles, and sit down and get into a very calm, creative state, because you've internalized these ideas, and allow the universe to flow to and through you, and to write the book through you. I think, don't you think that would be more impactful than sitting and trying to devise a specific plan, especially if you've been imbibing this knowledge, this information for so long? Why not just let it flow through you? Because then when you're doing that, you tapping into the subconscious, you're tapping into the emotional, the universal side of you. Does that make sense?
Oh, Miley. Yes. Yeah, it does. I mean, I suppose, from that perspective, it's just such a huge, I've got in my head from that perspective, you've got the ideas, I suppose, but then you've got the physical transporting those ideas onto a piece of paper. In, I suppose, going back to a paradigm where I was never very good, in inverted commas, at English, and therefore, it's not going to come naturally. So I suppose I just need to kick that out of the park and just know that it'll just go.
Why do you have an editor? I mean, your language doesn't need to be perfect. You can get some people that can perfect that for you. You can get some ghostwriters to assist, a ghostwriter to assist you. You can edit it yourself. You can cross-check it, but just let it flow initially. Maybe write a page or two every day. And for a year, after your first year, you'll have a book. And then the next year, Bob Proctor used to say, if you're really serious, and then the next year, every day, wake up and edit the page. And edit the page every day. So you can do the editing later, but I think it's far more powerful if we just let it flow from a creative perspective. I promise you, Emma, even on this call right now, we've got 9 people in the clubhouse, and so many more this is gonna be streamed to. People get far more value from communicating emotionally. Like, we could be sitting here giving them 10 bullet points and strategy, and I promise you within a couple of minutes we're going to lose people. But when we communicate with stories and with a lot of emotion, and we just let the spirit flow to and through us, I promise you it connects. You know this. I mean, you absolutely know this. So when you're sitting and you're writing that book, allow it to be written through you.
Okay, I'll jump back on it. No pressure. So yes, I can see we've got the sort of last 9 or 10 minutes here. But so really, as this path of change, what would you advise somebody who is currently, looking at their results and thinking, well, that's all very well, but how am I going to change them? So I know we've looked at those minds, but it really is sort of steps, isn't it? What kind of steps might they take initially to move towards changing those results?
I think one of the first changes that somebody can do, Napoleon Hill, to create this philosophy, Think and Grow Rich, he studied 500 of the most successful people in the early 1900s over a period of 25 years, a quarter of a century. This philosophy is so deep, it's so profound. Like, you can imagine with that level of research and study. And he says the keystone of this philosophy, chapter 4, he says the keystone of this philosophy is auto-suggestion. So you're asking what's one of the ways that someone listening to us now can change what's happening in their subconscious. It's through auto-suggestion. Now, what is auto-suggestion? That's actually the name of the chapter. It's a suggestion from yourself to yourself. And what you ideally want is you want an affirmation about your goal. So whether it's the amount of money you want to earn in a month, in a year, whether it's the value of your property portfolio, whatever your goal is, you want a statement, but it's got to be written in emotive language because the subconscious is the emotional mind. So my suggestion to you, and this was what Bob taught me to do, was start your goal out by writing, I am. Something so powerful about those first two words. I am so happy and grateful now that. I'm so happy and grateful now that, and then write out your goal. So I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm earning £20,000 per month from my property portfolio. I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, it's done. Whatever that is for you, whatever your income goal is for you, I'm so happy and grateful now that I own X amount of properties. I'm happy, I'm healthy, wealthy, it's done. And have this statement and you repeat it to yourself over and over, because when you understand how the mind works, the subconscious, it's through that constant spaced repetition that you move it into the subconscious. And if you do that for 7 days, 31 days, 90 days, and you continue doing it every day for 5 minutes, I mean, you might even want to get your phone and set a timer and just auto-suggest the heck out of your goal. Think of how much you're going to turn that into a belief. And I don't care which religion you subscribe to, which philosophy of success. Psychiatrists, psychologists, psychiatrists, they all say you've got to believe. That's where the magic is. And if there's any suggestion I can give to anybody in terms of how they can start the process of shifting what's happening in the sub, that would be the number one suggestion, Emma, is to get involved in auto-suggestion daily, disciplined auto-suggestion. And that's why people have affirmations and kind of mantras that they repeat to themselves. It's something that you've got to constantly be saying and repeating, which moves it into the subconscious, which controls the behavior.
So is it basically kind of like, the repetition is almost, you're brainwashing yourself into that belief. So it's that just constantly, the fact that, Hillary, he sat there, just believing constantly that he's going to get there, brings it to fruition, so to speak.
100%. Repetition is the first law of learning. When you went to school and you were a little girl, Emma, you started out with addition, right? And when you mastered addition, you went to subtraction and then division and multiplication. But the thing is, your teacher taught you something that says, Emma, 5 times 5 is 25. And initially, you kind of trying to figure it out, our little minds back then, we're trying to figure it out. And then they show it to us how it works. And then we get it, and then we kind of forget, and then they teach it to us again. So it's a constant spaced repetition. And that's how you move an idea. Because the subconscious is the emotional mind, one of two ways you're going to get it in there. One is an emotional impact, loss of a job, loss of a relationship, loss of a loved one. 9/11 for the people in New York City, extremely negative emotional impact, can be positive. In South Africa here, we had a very positive one in 1995 with the Rugby World Cup with Nelson Mandela and Francois Pienaar. But generally it's negative. And also another thing, generally we cannot control an emotional impact. Now the other way is this constant spaced repetition over and over and over. And that's how you get an idea from the conscious to the subconscious. Just one step further in terms of how you can truly shift your paradigm to be in harmony with the results you want. The amount of money you want to earn, your health results you'd like, relationship results. Bob Proctor, over 6 decades, he said he's never come across an individual. In all of that time working with people all around the world, he's never come across somebody who's done it by themselves. So you want to get involved in an elite level mindset coaching program combined with professional coaching over a reasonable period of time with that implementation of the constant spaced repetition. I mean, think of it, right? Why do the most successful athletes, whether we're talking about the top players in the English Premier League, why do the most successful athletes have coaches? Like, I'm pretty sure if you go to a Chelsea Football Club or Liverpool or Manchester United, you'll find they have mindset coaches, they have skills coaches, they have a head coach, and they have a forwards coach, and they have a back. You know, they're top athletes at the top of their game, and yet they still have mentors, or they still have people whose the mentor's job is to point out your blind spots.
Amazing. And we've just had Helen who's written something amazing. She said, I taught Edmund Hillary's granddaughter. Well, that is a story. I'd love to hear, Helen, if she had the tenacity and the imagination and the achievements that her grandfather had. Wow, what an incredible story. I'd love to hear more about that, Helen. So amazing. We've literally just got a couple of minutes left. So Lee, it would be great. Yeah, I know you always have fantastic webinars, so if people want to spend a bit more time with you, let them know. I know I've got a link at the top here, but tell us a bit about what you are going to be covering. I think it's Thursday, isn't it, this week?
So I'm running a webinar on Thursday at 10 a.m. UK. The title of the webinar is Entrepreneurs, How to Clear the Blocks to Your Abundance. And just quick 3 takeaways that everybody who joins us is going to take away from the webinar. It's free to attend. Number 1, I'm going to show you what the root cause of your results is, which we've discussed on today's conversation, Emma. But I'm going to really go deeper with the paradigm and show you some graphics and show you how this works from a mindset perspective. And then I'm going to show you how to change it. Number 2 is I'm going to introduce you to 3 income earning strategies and show you which is the best one to use. And thirdly, I'm going to give you a strategy to turn your annual income into a monthly income. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, or you're listening to us on Clubhouse, if you would like to turn your annual income into a monthly income, drop a hell yeah in the chat. Drop a hell yes in the chat. It's just such a wonderful idea, and it's something I've experienced, you know, with the mindset work that Bob Rock has taken me through. But that's a bit about the webinar on Thursday.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Lee, that's absolutely awesome. And yeah, Helen has said that Edmund Hillary's granddaughter was in fact head girl and a really lovely person and fun. So yeah, so that's having somebody like that in the family cannot help but to rub off on others, can it? So so yeah, the power of this kind of material. Well, look, Lee, as always, this has been tremendous spending an hour with you. I really, really appreciate it. I've written down loads of notes because whenever I speak to you, I always have new things that jump up and remind me what I need to keep doing and what I need to add on to. So yeah, I absolutely love that. But I'd really appreciate it if you have a kind of a closing thought for anyone, just to shut this down.
With regards to everything we've been talking about tonight, I'd just like to leave you with Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote, that we become what we think about all of the time. Not what we think about once in a while, now and again, what we think about all the time, so it's the repetition.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lee. And yeah, guys, this will be on YouTube. And yeah, do make sure that you subscribe and do follow us on here if this has been useful. And we will again be back next month with Mind Your Property. Thank you, Lee. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Emma, thanks for having me.
No
Ciao.
worries. Take care. Bye-bye.